Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good
Oops,
afternoon.
can you hear me?
I
All
can. How are
right.
you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's
I
it's it,
see you're in your spot. You've got your spot.
yeah. I'm actually at work. We have a spot that's pretty. It's made for filming, and it's nice and quiet. It's soundproof, so it
Oh,
works out really
sweet.
well. Yeah.
So what is work? Where's work?
I work for a university here in Virginia. I'm a librarian. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got that. So in Virginia.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, where in Virginia?
Newport News. So it's Christopher Newport University.
Oh, great. Okay. Fabulous. All right. Yay. So you're a librarian, one of those mysterious people. You know, the librarians are the mysterious people. I learned a long time ago, especially uh, when I was, oh, yeah. Okay. The librarians around here, which is clear on the other,
Mhm.
3,000 miles away, the ones not at the university, but the ones in my town.
Mhm.
Okay, they were a band of mysterious people, and they did make me a little nervous. They had access to a lot of information, and a wild tarot story about the librarians was that, well, this is, and then we can start, but
Okay. Yeah.
the wild tarot story about the librarians was, once I did get interested in this, and then the first thing I thought of, because it was my background, is go to the library and find
Mhm.
something. And so in Tarot, there wasn't anything then. But however, though, OMG, maybe this is appropriate for the interview, but I wasn't even thinking about it. Okay, so um, I go to the library, I find a book by Joseph Campbell. Okay, that's unbelievable. And someone else about Tarot. I check out this book, fearing the librarians are going to identify me. Small town, because
Yeah.
what I'm checking out, right? Then I go home, and out of that book falls the Wheel of Fortune card from the weight deck.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, oh no, this means somebody is missing their card.
Yeah.
So me being like this good citizen, I think I need to take this back to the library and turn it in, right? This is like the library, turn the card in. And then I thought, no, you can't go turn the card in, because if you do turn the card in, the librarians, they're really going to identify you, and you are never going to get beyond it. You are never going to get past it. That's it. She's the one who brought the tarot card in, right? So I kept it, and I have it
Oh,
to this day.
wow.
Turns out that was the first book. It was not a good book, but first book that I ever got on the subject turned out to be my destiny. Wheel
Wow.
of Fortune. There you
Very
go.
cool.
But that was
Very
all
cool.
about the librarians. They helped me later. They actually helped me later. They gave me meeting space for
Good.
the other stuff, the wild stuff. Yeah. Okay, that's enough of that story. So I'm Pamela. Hey.
Do you
Right.
go by like do people call you like Dr. Eakins?
No, you call, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
And I do pronounce it Eakins. That's not the correct pronunciation. I tried to change it, but it's so I do go by Pamela Eakins, and most people call me Pamela.
Okay.
So
Yeah, well, I know here on
yeah,
campus, you have doctors and you have
yeah.
professors, and some of them are like, please don't call me that. Just call me by my first name. It can be a little stuffy, but but I
Well,
appreciate
sometimes
education.
that's nice, though. I mean, it's nice to respect what people want, and but yeah, sometimes people call me by all kinds of other names, So anyway, we'll go with Pamela. That
Okay.
works.
Um, So
Anyway, yeah.
you are, um, I guess, co-creator of the Tarot of the Spirit, and you wrote the book. And your
Right.
mother,
So are we going? Have you
yeah,
started?
yeah, we can start. I mean,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, good. I didn't know if we were on or not.
well,
Okay.
we can
So,
start whenever.
okay, I see you're just rolling it. All right.
Yeah, you
Okay.
know. Um, so yeah, you and your mother created Tarot of the Spirit. You were the scribe, and you also wrote the accompanying book with it. And I guess the when people first get the deck, um, I guess they're attracted to the artwork, and then they see the meaning behind it. So um, I guess the big question: what initially drew you into the world of tarot?
What initially drew me in to the world of tarot? Tarot. I was inducted into the world of tarot. I was not drawn into the world of tarot.
Mhm.
I was roped into the world of tarot against my will, I thought. And the way this happened was, first of all, I was an academician already. So I'd had a PhD for several years. My background was in mental health primarily, with moving into physical health because I was doing research on physical health as well. And later it would become spiritual health, but I didn't know that yet.
Mhm.
So I received my PhD at the University of Colorado, and I taught there a lot of courses in mental health and illness, things like that. And then I went to Stanford University where I was doing the research on childbirth, and I had written a few books. And what happened was one day, one fateful day. So, first, you have to picture this. I was a card carrying professor with a briefcase and short hair, briefcase, shoes, teacher shoes that made noise, like noise when you walk down a hall. And this was my identity. So one Sunday morning, I was with my daughter, who was 5 years old at the time. We went out to a restaurant in our local little town by a working fishing harbor. And it was Sunday, so they had no space. This was a Sunday morning cafe, pancakes, right? They have no space. So I thought it would be difficult to wait 45 minutes with a 5-year-old. And so the hostess said, well, you can sit at the fisherman's table. And this is a big square table where only the fishermen sit, and they come and go from that table. So I said, all right, we'll take the fisherman's table. And it was full of fishermen. And there was one woman there. And she was not like the guys. Okay. She looked very different. And we scooted in the booth with right next to this woman. So it was this woman, my daughter, and me. And they were talking about the tides and the moon and the water, because that's what fishermen talk about a lot of the time. And my daughter says in that conversation, she said, oh, I love the faces of the moon. I draw them all the time. And I said, no, 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 no. They're not talking about faces. They're talking about phases, like a new moon, a full moon. Like when you look up, you see it's round, that's a full moon. And she said, oh, okay. And the woman said, I've been waiting for you. And I said, excuse me? And she says, 2 months. I've been here waiting for you. She said, I didn't know where you were. They told me you were coming. They told me you were here. 2 months I've been waiting at this harbor for you to show up. And I said, I don't think so. uh, and she said, no, you're going to apprentice with me. And you're going to apprentice with me, and we start tomorrow. So this is a Sunday. I'm working the next day. I was heading up a research team, actually at Stanford. Yeah, I was a director of a research project. And I said, no, I have to go to work tomorrow. And she said, oh, no, you don't. And I said, yeah, I do. No, you don't. And I said, maybe I don't. This is the weirdest thing. This is just the weirdest thing. So I said, okay, because I was up for an adventure and I had no idea what was happening. This was just the wildest thing. So she said, okay, you meet me at my truck in the parking lot, which had a camper shell on it, at some time tomorrow morning. So this is way back in the old days. This is a long time ago when people did not work from home. That's how long ago it was. So I got home and I called up I had a secretary. People don't have secretaries anymore either. I called up my secretary and I said, do you think it would be okay if I work at home tomorrow, work from home? Because I think you could handle it maybe, and I've got stuff that I need to do and I could do at home. And she said, sure, no problem, no problem. You don't need to come in. Everything here is okay. So I say, okay, all right, right. So I get up the next day. I drop my daughter off at the daycare and I went to that truck. I went to that truck parked in the harbor parking lot. Turns out, by the way, that woman was working on those fishing boats. What she was doing, she said she had gone to the fishing boats to wait for me. So she was working on a boat, gutting fish. Even though she was a vegetarian, she was working on a sport fishing boat and she would gut everybody's fish like early in the morning. She was wearing, I have to tell you what she's wearing, long black dress and a turban when I met her. So it turns out that was also her work outfit on the boat. Long black dress and a turban. I mean, she was intriguing, right? So she was vegetarian and she said she was trying to come to terms with food on the planet. But back to the story. Okay, so I meet her in her truck with a camper shell on it and a Doberman. And she says, we're going back to that restaurant where we were yesterday. And we're going to sit at a table in the back. I have a place and I'm going to show you something. So we go over there. She pulls out a tarot deck. Of course, she knew I was going to get there, right? It had to be. She pulls out a tarot deck and she says, read for me. And I say, well, I don't know how. And she said, yes, you do. And I said, no, I don't. Yes, you do. We have this argument. She says, I already know you do. And so I pulled the cards out and for some reason I knew how to read them. And so I did a reading for her and she said, exactly. Okay, so almost immediately what happened was, it was the same day. She said, I've been waiting for you for 2 months because you are going to create a tarot deck. She said, I was going to do it, but she said, I can't because I'm too old and I can't do it now. And they told me that a woman was coming. And she said, as soon as you walked in the door of the restaurant, I recognized you, that you were the person. And she said, it's unmistakable and it's already a done deal. You're going to do this. And I said, no, I'm not, because it would ruin my career, ruin my academic career completely. And she said, you were going to do this. Okay, so at the time, there were 7 tarot decks on the market. This is how long ago it was. And she found all of them wanting. One was too dark, one was too light, one wasn't deep enough, one was too masculine, one was too feminine. And she said, every single one of them is out of balance. The main thing that is missing is an imbalance tarot deck. And you're the one who is going to make that happen because it's necessary for our world right now. Well, after I looked at the tarot deck only a little bit, I began to see that it was a brilliant map of developmental consciousness. And I had already studied, I had a background in psychology and developmental psychology. I had a background in sociology, and you might call it developmental social consciousness or society, and the way all that fit together. Within a very, very short period of time, I saw that this tarot deck surpassed, and I still believe this completely, surpassed all the psychological and social theory that I had learned in my education. That it was that brilliant. And then I wound up saying, maybe I will. So then the next stage was, I got really, really interested and really involved in this. And I started apprenticing with her. And then I called my mother on the phone. Okay, my mom lived 1,000 miles away. And I said, and my mother was an art professor. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I say, Mom, would you ever consider painting a tarot deck? And she said, a what? I say, a tarot deck? And she says, no, 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 no. She was a, quote, a fine artist, highly trained, a fine artist. And there's no way she was going to paint what she called little cartoon characters on little pieces of paper. No way. Okay, but it wasn't just that. The other part of the story was, if she painted a tarot deck, it would ruin her career. Because remember, this was in the early 80s. People were not as conscious as they are now about these things. And tarot was considered very suspect then. In fact, I did get a couple of death threats. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I'm telling you that it was suspect. So in any event, what happened was I wound up joining not one, but 3 Western mystery schools, because in the academic tradition, you always have to have 3 sources to verify your knowledge. You can't just have one, right? You've got to have 3 independent sources. And it can't be Wikipedia, or that's the way it was. It has to be 3 independent primary sources. Okay, and so I wound up in 3 mystery schools as this very intense mystery school student. So the way I look at it was, I got inducted into the ancient temple of the Western Mystery School, and I got deeply into it. So my mother, what happened with her, I called her 3 times over a period of 6 months. Will you paint a tarot deck? No, no, no. The 3rd time I called her, something mysterious had happened with her. She had hurt her back. She was in a yoga class trying to fix her back. And she was in a store, just a bookstore. And she had had a dream the night before about Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey telling her, you're the one and the time is now. And she's like, what? Who's Mrs. Bailey? It was Mrs. Bailey. And Mrs. Bailey came to her and told her that what she had to do. And she wondered what this was, this Mrs. Bailey stuff. So she goes to the bookstore and she finds this book by Alice Bailey, and she's at the checkout. And her yoga teacher comes walking up and says, oh, hi, Alice Bailey. And he says, you might be interested in this. And he pulls out of his back pocket a little trifold brochure, puts it down in front of her. Well, It's the Western Mystery School.
Mm.
That one was the BOTA. We were both in the BOTA, right? So she says, well, this is interesting. And, you know, I have no idea what it is. She signed up. So my mom independently, in those 6 months, got called independently, got inducted into the Western Mystery School by her teacher, her yoga teacher.
Mm.
So she was absolutely fascinated because it's all based on the Kabbalah, right? And so so for me, the Tarot and the Kabbalah, the Tarot immediately opened the doorway into Kabbalah, the tree of life. It was never separate from the tree of life because of the mystery school orientation. So she entered into that Western mystery school herself. So by the third time I called her, I said, Mom, would you ever be interested in painting a tarot deck? And she said to me, you won't believe what's happened. And she was completely immersed. So that was the beginning. That's how it started.
So I guess you answered quite a few questions. How was the dynamic of you working with your mother? So,
Oh,
so how was that? You know, mother, daughter,
okay. That
scribe,
was
and artist.
okay. So my mom said, uh, my mother says, okay. And I had sketched out a lot of drawings and stuff. Um, and in terms of the dynamic between my mother and me, uh, yeah, she never followed one of my drawings or came even close. Okay. I had this I thought it was a beautiful set of drawings for what in the Tarot of the Spirit is the earth suit, which is the pentacles and the earth. And I was using acorns as the denomination. And I thought it was quite brilliant because of the tree and all this. Well, there's not a single acorn in the Tarot of the Spirit. So my mom had her own way of doing it. And basically what she said is well, I'm going to start with one card, one. And that card would be the one of fire, the one of wands. And she said, if it feels like, you know, it's going to stick, maybe I'll do another card. And I said, well, that's not going to really help that much, you know, because there's a lot of cards here. So she said, well, I'll try. Well, what happened was, so my mom, I was writing like crazy. And my mother went into her studio, her art studio, and basically did not emerge for 3 years. I mean, she was still teaching, but it was like all her friendships, everything started disappearing. She was completely immersed. And she was studying, first, I want to say she was studying very deeply in the Western mystery tradition, as was I. At the same time, she was, you might say, drawing down the images. She was holding the paintbrush. I mean, she had a paintbrush, I had a pen, right? So she's holding the brush, and here come these images, and they were starting to pour out onto the paper. But what was even more interesting at the time was that every one of the images, she marked the paper with the tree of life, but it wasn't drawn on. It was only in pin pricks, like a little pin. So she had the diagram of the tree of life. This is the tree of life, right? And so she put a pin prick right in the middle of each spot, so you could only feel it. You couldn't even see it. You could feel the pin prick. So and then the colors and everything began to emerge. So, oh, by the way, on my chart here, there are colors that match each. Well, for most of the people who you would be engaged with, they know what this is, right? So there are colors, all the threes, the one I'm pointing at right now, all the threes happen to fit in that particular sphere. And the sphere has a color. So each one of these spheres has a color. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the 10 of, we call it fire, water, air, and earth, and fire, water, rather, wind and earth. And there's a reason for that too. But so she already knew the color dynamics. So when she was painting the card, so say a particular card would come up, And if on that card, so I'm holding up, this is the Empress.
Mhm.
So the number 6 fits right in here, the number 6, and it's yellow. Um, the Kabbalistic color of the card is yellow. And then this would be the, that is the threes. I'm looking at it backwards in the screen. This is the threes, this is the twos over here, and this is the ones up here. So you can sort of see the tree of life in the background here, if you look carefully.
Yes.
And then, yeah, and then every single color on the card, like if you see yellow down here, it looks like an abstract painting. This is the Empress, but this is not. It looks abstract, but it's not abstract. The yellow is there for a very, very specific reason, because it's illuminating with the energy of the number 6, a specific part of this card. So the more you learn about this and the more you understand Tarot of the Spirit, we started to create, because of the person who had drafted me off the street. And I know now she did recognize me for whatever reason, because this is what I was supposed to do. That this was a very advanced tarot, and what made it different from anything that was on the market, but as I said, there were only 7 decks on the market. And what made it different from anything on the market was its exact balance. It's completely balanced in light and dark, with using the all the mystery school teachings. And it's not just the mystery school teachings, because I'm going to return to my relationship with my mom and just so the it isn't just the mystery school teachings, because also it's filled with all of the psychology and the sociology and everything that was part of my background before. And beyond that, I also immersed in the study of comparative religion. So when you look at Tarot of the Spirit, this is the book. This is the book that I wrote. And if you look in the back of the book, or if you look in the back of the book, you're going to see tons of footnotes. This is probably the only tarot book that exists that is filled with footnotes. And it has, all of the, like the sources of, if something is related to a particular religion or a particular theory or something like that, it's got the source of where it came from. And actually, I'm going to return to my mom, but I'm remembering going through this this kind of consternation whether I should credit, because having this academic background, you credit everybody. You don't just say something without crediting somebody, right? So then I started wondering if I should be crediting my invisible guides. And I had to have a conversation with them. It was really funny. I had a big conversation with them one time, and they were laughing at me, and they said, "You don't have to cite every single source." So anyway, and my mom too, because she was like, she also had that background where you always credit. So anyway, back to my relationship with my mom. She and I had a very normal, dysfunctional mother-daughter relationship. We we were always more like peers than mother-daughter. And the great thing about doing this project together, I'll call it a project. I mean, my mom is still alive. She's still on the planet. Yeah. And we're still in this project. It never, ever ended. And so the great thing about doing this project with her was that it healed our relationship, because we came to look at a much bigger picture of everything. We were looking at this big picture. And at the time, what would happen was she would paint about maybe 6 paintings or something like that. And then she would package them very, very carefully, and she would fly out to my house. She had my brother work for the airlines. This was so lucky. She had flight benefits, and she would fly out to my house, and she'd had this package. I'd pick her up at the airport. She'd have this package, and we would just be shaking with like excitement, you know, and I'm doing the book and she's doing the deck. And we would take these pictures, and my mom would put on white gloves, like pull on these white gloves, like the magus, right? The magician. And then she would carefully open these packages, like opening them up. And then she would pull out a picture, and then she would put it up. I have these big windows with a lot of light behind them, just the ocean behind them, actually. And she would put one in the window, and it would shine like stained glass. And, you know, she would line them up like six in the windows. And we would just, ooh, and ah, and we would spend maybe 3-4 days talking about this. And then my little daughter also was very involved. And then my son was, I had a baby son, a little son too, and they were totally involved. And my daughter was just oohing and awing and giving her my daughter gave interpretations of the cards, and everything came alive and went into that process. It was an extraordinary process. It went on for 7 years.
Wow.
It took 7 years to make the deck. Okay, it was so deep and so involved. And so it took 7 years to create this deck. By the time we finished with the deck, well, 3 years in, we already had contracts for the book and the deck. And that was another miraculous thing, the way that happened so mysteriously. Because there were no sets then, like a set where you have a book and a deck. Well, I'll tell that story really quick, and then back to another aspect. But we sent the cards via big slides, because that's how you did it in those days, through the mail. This is way pre-internet. We're still in the 80s here. So we sent the slides to US Games. You could not publish your own deck at the time because the technology did not exist. It would have cost $150,000 to publish a deck. It was that expensive. So US Games was the only game in town, really, that at that time. So we had sent the slides to US Games, Stuart Kaplan, the president of US Games, and then we sent the book to Samuel Weiser, and they were the #1 publisher of Kabbalistic materials at that time. So those two, they got those materials. And then shortly after, there was, so US Games was in Stamford, Connecticut, and Samuel Weiser at the time was in York Beach, Maine. Okay, so there was a book fair conference in Los Angeles, a Western book conference. And so turns out, by chance, Stuart Kaplan, the president of US Games, and Betty Lundstedt, the senior editor at Samuel Weiser, were sitting next to each other on a flight from New York to Los Angeles. And by chance, they both had our materials. And one of them leaned over to the other one and said, "What are you looking at? What is that you're looking at?" Tarot of the Spirit. "I'm looking at Tarot of the Spirit." And so by the time they got to LA, they had decided to do this was the very first like co-publishing event where there was a book and a deck by 2 different publishers that they had agreed to publish.
Wow.
So that was very exciting. So they were thrilled by it. They both said, both of them said, "This is a classic. This is really important and we need to publish it," right? So that was really good. And we felt great about that. We thought, actually, I have to tell you, we were kind of mixed feelings, because we still had the feeling that our careers would be over when it came out. We discussed this a lot. So anyway, but by the time it came out, because the process took so long to get the colors of the cards right and so on, because the technology was very poor back then. They did 4 color separations. They printed 20 cards on one sheet. They had to balance all the colors for the whole sheet. The colors were terrible. And every time the proofs didn't come out right. You had to get in the back of the line, they called it, for the big printing presses, because they only had 2 printing presses where they could print these decks, and they were both in Europe. So one was in Zurich and one was in Belgium, Antwerp, I think it was. So we had to get in the back of the line, and every time you got in the back of the line, it took another 6 months, but it was never right, you know. So so it took us several years to actually get it out. So when we started, there were 7 decks. It took 7 years for us to do this project. And when it came out, there were 700 decks on the market. We had received this energy like rain coming to the planet. Suddenly, it was everywhere. But even though it seemed everywhere, it was still only the beginning of everywhere, because now we know there are thousands, countless decks, thousands and thousands and thousands of decks, right? But Tarot of the Spirit has been in print since the early days.
Yeah.
You know, so we're coming up on our 30th anniversary, and in fact, the U.S. Games is issuing a new deck in 2021. So they're going to be doing another anniversary deck. They did a 20th anniversary deck, a new one, and now they're going to do another one.
I think that's the one I had, the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, that's the 20th anniversary deck.
It came with a clear card.
Yes, it can. So right, this is the one with I have it here too. This is the one with my mom's little pinpricks, right? But this was not in the first deck because no one, the overlay, no one understood what it was or how to use it. You know, because this deck, and it never would have been any different, but this deck is a Kabbalistic deck, and that sets it apart from most of the tarot decks out there. It's a teaching deck.
Yes.
It's for teaching. It's still advanced, and it's for teaching. Oh, and also that now I've done another book, this one, Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit. So this is the Western Mystery School. I also teach in the Western Mystery School, so I have my own Western Mystery School, but this is basically Western Mystery School. And this is a big book, you know, it's like 1,000 pages, and it's like how Tarot of the Spirit relates to the Western Mystery School tradition, the ancient temple. Okay, eventually, you know what? I got over my fear that it was going to wreck my career. Maybe it did wreck my career, or I realized that this was so important that I began to dedicate my entire life to it. So I started my own, after being in those 3 mystery schools and completing that work and so on, I eventually created my own branch of the Western Mystery School tradition. So that's called Pacific Mystery School. And so I start classes every 3 months online, you know, in that. And yeah, and I teach lots of classes in this, because for me, in Tarot, because this for me is all about growing the soul, you know, deepening, becoming deep inside, and also the expansion of consciousness in such a way that we ourselves become like portals to the infinite, you know, that we can open ourselves as a portal, and our consciousness completely changes, it completely breaks open. And what I was doing before with in the academic world pales in comparison to the depth of the work in consciousness. So that's what I'm really interested in now, and continue to be interested in right now, is like this opening of consciousness. It's like, what happens if we break open our consciousness to this multi-dimensional way of understanding, you know, and then we become different as human beings. And I think there's a lot of promise for our species here. So, okay, there.
I completely agree with that.
Oh, good. You know,
you have a few videos on YouTube you've done where you're talking through the deck. Just a few. I watched them.
Oh, thank you for watching those. Yeah.
So I get a really important question is, what
Mhm.
would you want someone to know before they started picking up the deck and using it?
What would I want someone to know before they pick it up and start using it? Oh, two things. Something comes to mind. Two layers of divination. It's all about divination, right? In the beginning,
Mhm.
anyway. Usually, people start. They'll. Why would they pick it up, right? Because they have a question. Usually, so it can answer the question, and it can answer the question. Just you could just pick up a card, like. Okay, I'm going to pick up a card right now. This is what I call primary level divination. Oh, what would I want someone to know? That was the question. So I got the Four of Earth, which is a door. It's actually a door. You can open or close a door. And that's what I would like people to know. But you could open or close the door. But if you could see to consciousness, right? But if you could see that's a door, you can do a primary level divination, which is just you just look at the picture and then you just know something. Like, oh, this is a door. Okay, what does a door mean? I can open or close it. I can go through it or not go through it, depending. Okay, so secondary, I made up these words, primary and secondary level divination. Secondary level divination is where you actually study about the symbols, because it's all symbolic consciousness, right? So you can study about the symbols, and then if you begin to understand what the number four means, because this card was the four of earth, four of earth, and then so you, if you know what a four is and where it fits on the tree of life and the meaning of that, and then you understand what earth means as a culmination of the four suits, because earth is about manifestation. Okay, and the four is about stabilization, about stability, about solidity. This card's called power. I didn't even say that. You could come into your power. The question is, I have to remind myself. What was the question? It's about what would you want people to know when they picked up the deck? Okay, that they can just read it. They can read it, but if they study it, the deck can bring them power. It can
Mm.
open doors, it can bring them power. But if they study it and they know that outflow and the progression, it can bring so much more. And the more you study, the more it brings. So back to the Empress, I had her out for a
Mhm.
moment there. This card in Hebrew is called Dalet, Daleth. This was my meditation card for our interview.
Oh,
So I pulled it right before talking to you. So Daleth. And what does it mean? Door,
wow.
door in Hebrew. Okay, so she is the door. So if you know that, you could just say, oh, she's pretty and she's a number three. That's about creativity and imagination. So, oh, good things are going to happen to me. That'd be primary level. But secondary level, if you study about this card, you're going to know you are the door, or whoever you're doing the reading for, you are the way. You're actually creating you're creating, she's pregnant, you're creating what is going to come forward. And she's sitting on the Akashic records, the Akashic scroll
Mhm.
there. Like, this is where we come into our power. So these two cards can be really connected when we understand who we are, our creativity, what we're bringing forward. Then we get the key to that door and we can open the door and we can move through it. Also, there's a peephole on the door right
There
there.
is.
You can look through, you can look through the peephole and you can ask, you can see, do I want to open this door? Let me just say one more thing. If you open the door of Tarot of the Spirit, you there's no turning back. And that's what I learned. It is when you step into the temple, the mystery school, that's it. You're hooked, because it is so deep and so powerful and so magical and so inspirational. And there's so much promise there. You don't want to turn back. You want to keep going. What's the next card? What's the next? And the cards are just, the cards are flashcards of the Kabbalah, basically, is what they are, Kabbalistic knowledge. So there's this thing actually is called the Tree of Life. And what the Tree of Life is it's a diagram that by which we can make step-by-step spiritual progress by understanding each aspect of that diagram. But the knowledge that we receive as we go through that, only each of us can receive. It can't really be taught, it can only be received. And it's the knowledge we receive that is called Kabbalah. So it's not really that Tree of Life diagram, it's the knowledge we receive. And once we start, because Kabbalah means to receive in Hebrew, it means receive. And once we begin to receive that knowledge, we absolutely never want to go back, because the knowledge is filled with meaning and power and purpose and connection to the cosmos and the divine and divine wisdom, direct connection to the feeling of creation. So that's what I want people to know. Watch out, don't step in unless you're ready, right? Don't step in unless you're ready for everything.
Another one is you included a mystery card, sort of that untitled card, and you kind of left it open. And this card is sort of, if it comes up, or some people might pull it out of the deck, how would you want someone to use that untitled card?
Okay, I'm going to tell you the secret.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you the secret about that card. So it's not so much a secret anymore, but it was. Okay, that card represents the secret 11th sphere, which is a portal, another portal. Here it is. It's a portal to another way of knowing. And this card is located on this diagram. This card is located here. Is where it fits on the diagram. And it's called DAATH, DAATH, and that means the sphere of knowledge. Okay, so it is the deepest sphere of knowledge. And sometimes we have to go into the abyss, this is called the abyss, to find that knowledge. Sometimes the abyss it can be like the dark night of the soul, because we can only go in there really alone. And then we have to find our way out. But it's there that we learn everything. So this card has runes on it, and those runes spell out midwife of birth, death, and karmic transition. So what it says is, when you find yourself in the abyss, in that dark space, in the world of the unknown, or you find yourself in the apocalypse going forward, which a lot of people feel like right now, you are being midwifed through this if you recognize and if you have eyes to see, and you are becoming the midwife of birth, death, and karmic transition, so that you can help people move through that space. So that's what this card means. Okay, in Tarot of the Spirit, in the book that goes with the cards, that came out with the cards, this one, Tarot of the Spirit, there's nothing in this book about that card except a little poem. The reason for that is, at that point in time, which this was in the 80s, it was prohibited by the mystery schools to speak the word aloud. And now I just spoke it. Dot, dot, dot. I've spoken it. So because it was such a secret place that you couldn't even say it. I mean, it was taboo. It was absolutely taboo. But in this book, Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, I have a whole chapter on it, on that card. An entire chapter in the book about the secret sphere, number 11, related, by the way, to the 1111, It's a doorway. So there are 3 doorways. We have 3 doorways sitting in front of us. And these would be probably the 3 major doorways. And so those are the 3 cards that happen to come up today. So here's the doorway. Here's the doorway between dimensions. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is when it's also a pen, like a pen point, like you're writing like a pen. And so once you begin to understand this, you are hitting the middle of the target. And you can now, you are understanding so deeply that you can share in a very deep way. By the way, it's also a fish hook, and I'm not going to go into that
Oh,
right now, but I will say that I said earlier, once you start, you're hooked. You're hooked. You know, just like I got hooked over there at the fisherman's table at the harbor. You're hooked, and once you're hooked, uh, you'll remain, you know, pretty much on the line. And you know, I love the line. The line just occurred to me like a hello, like the Hierophant's got a headpiece on, you know,
mhm.
like hello, yeah, I hear you, I hear you. Okay, all right. And what about this? Okay, I think that will work too. You know, so it's a conversation about our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
card is like it is a mystery card. It's very, very secretive, but I understand why you didn't really expound on it, especially in the book, the accompanying book.
Mm.
Makes complete sense. So I
So
guess
yeah, it's
um,
things are opening now though, you
yeah,
know, they're opening, they're different, things have changed. This almost, you know, that's almost 40 years ago when we began. So now we have tarot everywhere and we have our consciousness opening everywhere in every direction now. So it's safe. People use it, well, what I mean by it's safe, psychologists use the tarot now in their practices. You know, that would never have 40 years ago, that would have been impossible, except for maybe Carl Jung.
yeah.
He might have, you know, he might have. So okay, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
I guess winding down the interview, um, are there any cards that you really are drawn to that you just, you need to really think about them, or they're your favorites, but they're more than your favorites. They really, you really connect with them.
That's an interesting question. I love that question. So one, when you said it, one really one popped into my head big time, and it is the star. Okay, and this card is, this is Aquarius on the bottom, and so it's like Aquarius, this is the new consciousness that we want to bring in. And this reminds me too of the things I've been talking about today with regard to the door, the portal, the dimensions. And this is like as above, so below, follow your star. You are not alone. There is so much waiting for you, and you have a higher consciousness. And when you step into it, you're going to start creating in the way that you feel your star rising. So this is the one that came into my consciousness. And when US Games published the 20th year anniversary deck, that was in 2012, they did that. Um, the what was different about that deck compared to the first deck
Mhm.
was the colors on the card, because as I mentioned before, they had done them on sheets where they had to adjust the color, 20 cards on a sheet, and then all the cards came out muddy because they would have to do these adjustments like that. So that was the old technology. So in 2012, by the time they got to 2012, there was different technology. So what they did is they took the original paintings in 2012 and they rescanned them on a fine art scanner in New York, you know, really high, very high tech. And then with this deck, ever since 2012, every single one of these cards is now printed out individually based on the original paintings. So when I got that, I got it on winter solstice, uh, winter solstice on oh no, oh my gosh, that's not the right story. I got the first deck, the very first one, on winter solstice in 1992. It arrived. Then this deck arrived on New Year's Eve, just in time for me to do a New Year's Eve drawing. This is the new deck from 2012. So it arrived on New Year's Eve. So I thought, oh, wow, I got a box of decks, right? Here's the new deck. Here's the new deck. And I couldn't wait to see what it looked like. So I pulled out the deck, a deck on top of the cards, you know, deck on the, out of the box. I shuffled it and shuffled it and shuffled it. And I said, what will my relationship be to the new deck? The one that's printed out like this with the right colors and everything perfect and so clear. And this was the card I drew, the star. And so this card has been with me since 2012. And when we get the next version of the deck, so there'll be another major version of the deck next year. And when we get that version, maybe we'll go to another level. I don't know. But I mean, I just keep moving with it. I mean, we're with it. We're very much alive with it. US Games is very much alive with it. It's really a living process for all of us. And now we're going into the 4th generation on this particular tarot deck, using this tarot deck. So, I mean, in our family.
Yeah.
So yeah, very exciting. So the star, what's yours? Do you have one?
I really
Or
like
can I
karma.
draw one for you?
Yeah, this is my
Oh,
favorite.
karma.
Yeah.
Karma.
The colors and the sort of infinite space and then the flaming heart.
Mm,
Something about it. It just really, I don't know.
wow.
The colors really draw me. And then this one always pops out.
Oh, the one of Earth.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
new
really,
possibilities on the material plane and going deeper and deeper into your karma, right? Cause and effect, right place, right time, your calling.
those are my 2 favorite cards so far. There are lots of
Okay,
others, but
so now I know we're coming to an end. So I want to draw a card for you. We didn't even do a reading. What is a tarot deck without a reading,
oh,
right? Okay, let's draw a card for you.
okay,
Let's draw a card for you for your next leg of the journey. What
okay.
about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. I love the tarot. I love it. I work with it every single day. I work with it for myself. I work with it for other people. Very exciting path for me. Okay, one more. I have to shuffle until they say it's in the right order. Okay, we could do a whole big spread, but we'll just get one card
That sounds
and
good.
see where it takes us. Okay. All right. Okay. 3 of fire. This card says you are so on the path. That's the middle pillar of the tree of life. You are absolutely, completely on the path. If you doubt it, it's like driving down a road and you're going to the top of a hill and it takes a while to get to the top of that hill. But once you get to the top of that hill, you can see the entire landscape and you know exactly where you are and what is happening. But there could be temptation when you're going up that road to turn off on a side street. Oh, I could go this way, or could go this way, or this looks interesting, because it can be a long journey up the hill. But but this card says, don't veer off the path. You are on exactly the right path. Okay, so back to my mom who painted this card. This jellyfish-like form in the background here is actually what she calls the brain, literally the brain of Christ. Okay,
Wow.
so that refers to Christed consciousness or enlightened consciousness. I mean, it doesn't have to be Christ. I'm just saying that's what she calls it, the brain of Christ. But it could be, it's Christ, it's Buddha, it's the enlightened messenger consciousness. And that's actually what you see when you get to the top of the hill, if you stay on the path, that you are actually headed toward absolutely enlightened consciousness. Then you bring it back, and this is like a root ball that the tree of life grows out of. You see the root ball, like you fill the root ball with everything that you're learning, and it becomes like this continual process. So we were asking, what is the next stage, or what is the next place or position, or where are you headed? And so here's where we are going with this. enlightened consciousness, no less, no less than enlightened consciousness, no less.
That's awesome.
End of the tale. All right.
Well, thank you so much for this. This is a treat. It was wonderful talking with you, and you taking the time out. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's super fun,
Yeah,
really fun, and you can see how much I love it. So thank you. It was really great, and I am wishing you the best on your journey.
you as
Mhm.
well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and you take good care.
You too. Have a great rest of your day.
You
Bye.
too. Okay. Bye bye.